Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today with episode 176 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast.
And it's me, Karak, with ACG.
All right, Karak, we got ourselves a banging week. Got some great games that dropped. Fallout Beta. We got tons of news. We got so much to go over, so we thank everyone for tuning in to this episode of the H.A.M Radio Podcast. If you want to support the show further, head on over to the Patreon, and you can...
Lick a buck.
Thank you. And if you flick a buck, you can get early access on SoundCloud, along with access to our Discord and all this exciting stuff. Karak also has a Patreon where he's doing tons of cool stuff, always interacting with his viewers. It's great stuff there. So be sure to check out both of those, and if you want to support the show and keep us on the air. Anyway, anything else for the intro? We're working on getting Yuri Lowenthal on. It's been tough because we had a date set, as I told you guys. It got canceled because Yuri had something going on, no problem. And then they gave us a different date, and then that date didn't work because that was like right around the same time as the beta for Fallout 76, so it just didn't pan out. So we're now scheduling a separate date, and once we actually have that set in stone and confirmed, we will announce it, but just know we are still working on that. And that's really all I've got for updates. Content-wise, it's just going to be a lot of Fallout Beta for me and some reviews I'm working on. Everything else, yeah, it's that time of the year where we're playing a lot of games. What about you, Karak? What are you working on, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same way. It's like the Red Dead at some point, as well as Hitman 2. I'll be covering that for sure. And then a couple smaller indie titles. I'm sort of, just because of my back being fucked up, I'm sort of like taking it a little easier than I normally would.
Of course.
So I definitely, somebody yesterday was like, in one of the videos was like, why did Karak stop doing reviews completely? I'm like, Jesus, dude, I just did Lego. But people are so accustomed to that. But yeah, it's definitely Red Dead. And then there was one other one we were talking about. So Fallout, Red Dead, Hitman. There was something else. I can't believe it. There's something else that comes out, and I'm spacing
Hero
it.
Academy?
Hero Academy we both have codes for, right?
Yeah,
because you've got to, that one I'm going to try to cover as well. Because are you going to try to cover that?
Yeah, I love that show.
That'll
way
be
too much
okay.
to not cover.
Cool.
I actually we'll get into it in a little bit, but on the launch of Red Dead, I played quite a bit of that just because my friends and I got it. And Red Dead, for before anyone freaks out, Red Dead's a game that I'm able just to kind of play at my own leisure for once. You know, it's like one of those tremendous games that comes out that I don't feel the pressure to make a ton of content on, and that I can just play whenever I want, when I'm feeling it. And let me tell you what, as a content creator, that's a very rare occurrence, especially for a game that good. So I'm kind of reveling in that. So that's why I've kind of waited to start. I'm savoring the experience and all that stuff. But
yeah,
anyway, we got a slew of news. We got some impressions. I've actually made a video on my impressions, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more because there's been some developments with it. And we haven't heard Karak's thoughts on it, but the Fallout 76 beta. So you said you played a little bit of it, just a little?
Very small
amount. So like,
Yeah.
What did you paint me in a picture in my head? What was your experience? You just left the vault, was like,
Yeah, and overall, honestly, I was looking at the technical stuff because it was a beta, and I'm not quite sure, like, where everything was going to be and how it was going to go. And I have to say, like, graphically, I was actually... Okay, so there were FPS issues, ignoring that for a second. I really liked the way it looked. So, like, yes, I get there were FPS issues, and that's something to worry about for sure. You definitely don't want that to happen. But I like the lighting and stuff like that. Like, that kind of stuff really looked cool to me. I liked the overall look of it. The way things moved was pretty okay. We were talking prior to the podcast, some people had issues with, what was it, the walking or what have you.
Really? There was a weight to it, were they saying?
No, it was your comment about somebody on YouTube. I thought they said like walking simulator, and that it felt slow.
Someone said it's a walking simulator. Yeah, because like
it's not though.
It's just BGS games have always had that though. And I'm not excusing it, because even Red Dead's got it. Most open world games, the Odyssey, which just dropped, like there's that point A to point B travel, where it's just you're in the world. So,
yeah, and overall, I would say that, played very little, just sort of made sure it was working. Got some email this morning from them, too. I don't know what that's about.
Probably about the beta times I got that, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's the only thing that actually, to be honest, sort of upset me, because I was actually planning on trying the second one because of timing. I was
Right.
like, oh, I'll jump into this one. And then seeing that like 1 hour or whatever the fuck that is, that I have to admit actually sort of, you know, it didn't upset me like, oh man, I'm angry. But it was like, that was sort of my plan. And the short beta time definitely, unfortunately, fucks up my plan a bit.
Gotcha. Yeah. That was what I alluded to earlier for those who were listening. There had been some changes to the beta, primarily with the times. Bethesda had fully announced the times, which I'll get a schedule out on my phone now. But for now, actually, as people listen to the podcast, they would have already experienced this session, but they announced that Saturday was going to be 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and people were really concerned, I guess, because they were like, wait, you said 4 to 8 hour sessions only? And then it changed out of nowhere. And some people were left feeling misled, but I think what folks aren't realizing is like Fallout 76 is kind of an early access game, and I don't say that in a good way, but with your save file carrying over and stuff, let me get the whole schedule up. We got Saturday, which, like I said, would have already happened, 5 to 7 Eastern. Then you got the next day. This is Xbox One only, by the way, 12 to 2. Then the first PS4 PC beta, which also includes Xbox. After all these dates afterwards also include Xbox. 7 to 11, so that's a 4-hour session. November 1st is going to be this 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. Then the 3rd is going to be 5 to 9 p.m. And then November 4th is 7 hours at 2 to 9 p.m. So you're going to have a lot of time with this game, especially if you're an Xbox One owner. You can get in, let me math real quick. You can get in, you have 4 on day 1, 2, 8, 12, 17, 21, 28 hours in the game before you actually pay your $60 if you're on Xbox One.
If you're on Xbox One.
Yeah, not too bad. So that's why I was like telling people in my video, I was like, I think there's a little, I get why folks are upset. I was certainly like, we have to wait this long for the next session and it's only 2 hours. That sucks. But I said I felt like there was a little tunnel vision with that, because I think I get it. Xbox One owners, they got something exclusive. They got something they're kind of excited about. And it's like, oh, it's just a little exclusive. It's only 8 hours. Yeah. But if you're Bethesda, do you feel, because this was a point I raised, do you feel like as a business they think to themselves, how much time do we want to let consumers have with our game before they decide, okay, I can cancel my pre-order? Like 28 hours, that's kind of do you think that's a little gutsy almost?
Yeah, I think that's a significant amount of time. Like even for a single player, let alone a multiplayer game, which you have questions on its longevity.
Right.
So to me, I was actually pretty surprised by that, and I didn't actually do the math. I thought it was more like half of that. So it does seem
that's
like
if it's on
a
Xbox,
long time.
So take off
if it's on Xbox.
About 20 hours if you're on PS4 or at PC.
But I mean, that's the thing, is like, that for a multiplayer game, dude, like that's actually quite a bit of time. Which I guess it makes sense, because we see a lot of multiplayer games going free to play now, and this is their version of saying we're not free to play, but we'll give you a good amount of hours up front. So I like it. But it is gutsy. Like, it's pretty ballsy to be, in a good way, to be, obviously us, it shows some confidence, and it benefits us.
$5 and you get to play that much time. You can really, so if someone's on the fence and they're listening to this and they're like, yeah, Fallout doesn't look like what I want it to be. I mean, you have to spend $5, get a code, and you can really figure out for yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of their plan. They want folks to get in and have time with the game and really decide for themselves, which is good for us. It sucks that it's not free like most betas, right? Because that kind of seemed to be the standard for a while. It was like, oh, it's available to everybody, and it just gets the industry chatting about it. I also feel like there's a clashing with Red Dead. Do you want to have all these beta hours going on during the weekend, or do you want to put it in a short burst window where some folks who care about Fallout will say, all right, I can drop Red Dead for 2 hours and on the weekend on a Sunday and go play Fallout and see what's going on there and see if I'm still enjoying that as much, even after what seems to be an amazing game by Rockstar.
Are you asking me?
I mean, I'm saying it almost. I'm putting it out into the wind and seeing if you were confirming or denying said statements.
I think that the people I've talked to who are interested in Fallout 76 run in two particular patterns. Mm-hmm. The people who aren't interested at all, and the people that are for sure getting it. And I think that Bethesda's doing a good job with this, because what they're doing is they're saying that middle ground people, the people who aren't for sure not getting it, like where they're dead set against it, that kind of gamer, where you're like, I fucking will not get it. But maybe somebody out there who's thinking off the, just tangentially about it, and this allows them to do that. It also, yes, it offers something in the midst of the Red Dead. It's like, here's something free, you can try it out. I think it's probably especially for any game going up against Red Dead, it's probably the best way to do it. It's one of the best ways to offer it, because it is going against a title that, regardless of what people think when they get it and all that stuff, that is the largest title in multiple years. And I think that Bethesda's doing a pretty good job of just saying, yeah, pop on in if you want, check it out.
And it benefits them, right? Because they're saying it's for short burst tests. Like, my assumption with this, which I'm not sure if it's entirely true, but I'm guessing they're like, we want to see what happens when we try to get a lot of people in a short period of time, is something along the lines of, the rush hour traffic for gaming. Like, it's 6 to 7, let a lot of people are signing in. Let's put it at a time frame where a lot of people are going to sign in for that short period of time and see if our servers can handle it. Because that's one thing. When I played the game, I complained about its performance technically, but I really was impressed by the fact that the beta's servers didn't crash at all. That's something that I wholeheartedly expected. I remember when I was waiting in my chair for the beta to start, a viewer tweeted at me, he's like, oh man, I'm at work right now, I really want to get home and play this. And I straight up said to him, I was like, don't hold your breath, because I feel like these servers aren't going to last long. And I didn't get booted once. The only time I skipped around was when it came to frame rate. It wasn't like lag, it was frame rate. So I was impressed on that aspect. I really didn't expect that from Bethesda, from their first, or Bethesda Game Studios, from their first online game. I have to say, I thought that would be the biggest issue with them.
I don't even know if I expect it, from anybody, even somebody who's done fucking millions of games. Like, that's it. I think overall that's a pretty impressive. A pretty impressive thing to actually occur. So I didn't really check to see if anybody else got booted. We didn't in the small amount of time we played, but I didn't really think of that. And going to be honest, I assumed that people were getting booted. I just assumed that.
I'm sure.
I assumed.
Have,
but it's funny you mention it. I didn't hear exactly. I didn't either, and I was in your Discord. And matter of fact, I think somebody was saying, can't remember who it was, but they were like, even in Australia, with the shit internet that we know, because Lone's been, where he's talked about the shit internet, even they weren't getting booted. So it seems like it was a good test overall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad. And what I noticed was, after the stress test, a lot of positivity came this game's way. And then after the beta, it's kind of been decided. And as someone who's very in on the Fallout community, I've seen how divisive it's become with, the inclusion of 4, and there are people who just love 4, and there are people who love New Vegas, which is a totally different game. And then Fallout 76 is going to split that crowd up into even more fragments of people who are just, I love 76, it's what I wanted. And that conversation will be interesting, but I feel like there's just been a decision that's been made. There are people who care about Fallout 76, and there are just people who don't and have moved on. And I think that's great. That's what it's supposed to be, because usually what you see is the lingering conversation that will stick to Fallout for a decent amount of time, I feel, but not as long, based on how the industry's developed, where they're going to talk about like, oh, this is what the game should have been. This is what the game could have been, when it's simply just too late for it to be anything else than what the product is. And if someone likes it in its current form, then it's for them, and that's it, right? So
yep.
I think that that's good for the industry, that folks are willing to just be like, yep, we have different opinions, let's just move on. But I've given out my general impressions on the beta in a completely separate video. It's like 20 minutes long, so if you guys want to check that out, feel free to. Do you have anything else you want to say on the beta in general? Just you tested out some of the performance, but anything?
Yeah, it was mostly performance shooting, just to see like how it was it Fallout 4 like co-op or multiplayer. Like that's pretty much what I was doing, was just seeing like, did it feel, because to me that is honestly pretty much where it's going to succeed for me personally. Right. Maybe not as a game, but for me personally, that's sort of what I wanted. And I was messing around with that and just sort of firing, then watching people play, and sort of seen if people approached it like, because what I don't want, Maddie, is I don't want Fallout 76 the fucking leaping simulator where everybody's jumping in front of me. And it's like that thing when you get into an online game and you're like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, everyone's like jumping around and joking.
It's circling. Yeah, at the starting of a blackout, fucking, or any of those battle royale games where people are like fucking running and shit.
Yeah,
and just
everyone's spamming emotes and like dancing and stuff. And you're like, this is a online game.
Yeah, this is an online game. This is a test bed for human society. And I personally feel like the slower feel of this game is actually, at least for me, more enticing, and I like the way it overall felt. And certainly when I was watching people's videos, it seemed like most people sort of did. I know that there's some negativity around how slow it moves, but I personally feel that that's actually a positive towards it, not a negative.
Right. I mean, it depends on what kind of gamer you are, because it's not like Red Dead where you can get up on your horse and go where you need to in a little bit quicker fashion.
Exactly.
Like Fallout has notoriously, except for some of the older ones with the Highwayman, has been on foot. And so I get why some people have some discrepancy with the on foot travel and it being a little long. But the one issue I had initially out the gate was, and it was because I think the beta was launching, so everyone was at the same point at the same time, which was, this is the beginning of the adventure. So everyone's leaving the vault, so you do leave the vault. You don't see everyone jumping around too much. Like I saw one person standing there, and I looked down a hill, and one person was like looting, it looked like, and that was it. But like as I roamed, I consistently had encounters and encounters and encounters. A couple of people recognized me from my stream and were like smacking me around for no reason while I was going through my menu. That was a little annoying. But as the stream carried on, after that first like half hour, or rather no, that first hour, because I went to Flatwoods, which was like loaded with players. So it was like 8 people in the same room. But after that, you could see everyone kind of took the experience and did what they wanted with it. And I had like one encounter throughout the rest of it. It was just like a very Fallout-ish experience. It was me and the world, and that was it. And when I did hear shots and I did know it was a player, it did hit me a little bit like, oh, that's someone else. But it wasn't like the sizzle way Bethesda sold it. Like that had already kind of worn off of like, oh, it's another player. Oh fuck, I'm gonna go see what he's up to. It's
that's
like,
what I think's the best thing, because I personally feel that that's not the strength that they should actually be pushing.
Yeah, because I mean, if I'm honest, I don't fucking care what that person's up to. It's not like
exactly
the Dark Zone where I can just go up and shoot him. I have to initiate with him. He has to initiate back. And he can just block me if he doesn't want to. They need to have multiple servers, like a private one, of course, which that's not happening until 2019. And they need to have a server where it's just like all out. Yeah, you can shoot someone.
They gave a date on that?
They said for private servers, they said nothing until November 2019, the earliest. A year after launch.
Okay. Well, I mean, at least they talked about it.
Yeah, and I was shocked because out of all companies, Bethesda put a date on something like way early. Like early enough to piss people off where they're like, I gotta wait a year to play the game in a private server with mods.
They gave us data so early, I'm mad about it.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, enough about Fallout. Let's move on over to Red Dead Redemption 2. So, reviews dropped, and I gotta say, as expected, the game freaking killed it. I mean, it has 10s, 4.5 out of 5s, masterpieces written all over it. I, like I said in the beginning, have not had a chance to play it yet. Tomorrow, as I record this, that'll be Saturday, will be the day I start Red Dead. And I'm very, very, very excited now because, like I said, it's for me, it's like I'm not a YouTuber with this game. It's like, I wasn't sure, because I respect it's a good product, but I was like, I'm not sure if this is going to be a game for me. And then I'm like, it's a fucking open world game. Of course it's for me. And then I hear these rave reviews on stuff that I really dig, like character interaction, storytelling, dynamic encounters in the world, and I'm like, that's stuff I obsess over. So I'm really excited to dive in and really take it at my own pace. But you, my friend, have played how much have you played actually?
I'm 40 plus hours now. I think I'm almost 50 hours now.
How are you liking it?
So it is, I'll just spoil my review and say, at least for now, unless something changes, most likely it'll be a buy. But I will say that somebody like yourself, I have a feeling. So it's something I saw on Metacritic, for example, today. So this is sort of just to give context to something. I a lot of times will go to see where reviews are and where user score is, right? On sale, and so we're mad about this, what have you. But also just, is there a discrepancy, which you and I felt before, where we're like, what the fuck is this? Even you and I have felt towards each other with one or two games, but even more so with like a lot of other people. Where we're,
Right.
And I gotta say, the one thing about this game, you gotta go into it and attempt to understand that it is not in any way, shape, or form improving on GTA 5. It is a skin of GTA 5. And I mean that not in a bad way, because I like GTA 5. But the first time you're playing and they actually tell you that you can steal carriages and sell them at a place that is quite literally a copy of Los Santos Customs, where you used to steal cars and sell them. It even does the same animation when you pull the horse in, or when you adjust cosmetics, the horse will bounce like the car did because it draws the model. And if you played GTA and switched out the rear headlights or taillights, it would actually go like boo, boo, boo as the model. All that shit's there. So anybody who's played GTA 5 who thinks it's going to be gameplay wise a shit ton better, you're going to be sorely disappointed. It is not. It is not. In fact, it's still got the spongy control of GTA 5, and Colin Moriarty hit on that pretty hard on his review, and I saw it on a couple others. There is definitely some control issues with the game when it comes to responsiveness. But story-wise, presentation-wise, environment-wise, yeah, it's up there. God of War, Spider-Man, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't want to focus too much on the negatives in the sense of making it a negative conversation, but I'm more so, I think everyone's curious when everyone was assuming Red Dead was going to be this masterpiece. It turns out to very much, for most folks, be that. It's being recommended all over the place. So that's the only reason why I am just trying to hit on, or pick your brain rather, on some of these negatives, because I think with these types of games, people are so excited for so many years. There is that like natural, I'm going to overlook this, I guess.
Yeah.
Or how big, or rather, more realistically, how big of a deal is this in the scheme of things? That's my main question. Like, okay, the controls are a little we see some things that are similar between two games, which is very common. There is that, I always call it the DNA. A Battlefield game, there is some shared DNA between Battlefield and Battlefront. Same thing with BGS, whether it's Elder Scrolls or Fallout.
Right.
There is that DNA that has a similar feel. So, my question would be, like, how much does that take away from the game here? Like, do you feel like, because we're seeing what I think the best usage of terms would be reused assets to an extent, do you feel that's damaging the product at all?
I feel that I can just say I feel like I understand why the user score on Metacritic is only 7.5. Like, I get that. I actually, so it's 97 for the main reviews, 7.5, and I'm sure some of them involve the crunch, right? I'm absolutely sure some people rated it low because of that. But ignoring that and looking at some of them, I totally get it. How much it affects you is simply, I think, how much you go into it expecting something. So if you go into this expecting a great game, but you don't go like, I want every single thing fixed in GTA 5 or from GTA 5 that I didn't like, plus I wanted to do this and this, you probably will notice some issues, whether it be the aiming, the sponginess, the control of the horses. Also, I do think that Colin hit it pretty well. He covered it sort of the same way I'm going to, that, yeah, I like it, but there's a lot of things people did ignore. For example, HDR is broken, and I didn't really see anybody mention that. It is broken, like legitimately actually broken in how it's working. Also, super sampling on the PS4 Pro, for instance, Digital Foundry showed a video. It actually makes it look worse than the PS4.
Wow.
So the way it does its super sampling, it mirages everything, so it looks insanely blurry on the Pro unless you turn that off.
Gotcha.
So there's these things that I noticed people didn't really bring up that I will. The weightiness of the controls, there were certainly a lot of bugs. A lot of bugs. This is an open world game, so I expect
Naturally.
that. I just think when you go into it, you just have to. It's it is a new Rockstar game, but it's not like they're magically not making a video game that's Genesis and DNA, as you said, is from a title 7 years ago or 8 years ago. It is exactly that. As long as you're cool with that, you're going to be fine. But if you expect a Witcher 3 level of improvement, what I mean by that is look at Witcher 2 and Witcher 3.
Yeah.
You're like, the fuck? Because they're almost not even they're the same genre, but you get it.
It takes it on a whole nother level with traversal, world space, combat. Yeah, I got you.
I think graphically, I think graphically it's easy to get caught up, and then 10 hours, 20 hours in, it can feel front loaded because something looks graphically so impressive. I think as long as you go into this and know that it's not going to do those things, you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine, and you'll like it. It's just, please be aware, because I personally don't want people to go into it and expect all these things, because those are the people I'm talking to in Discord who are not happy with it. And the ones who had that, oh, it's going to be improved, 8 years of improvement. Not really. It's not really 8 years of improvement, if that makes sense. It's just a sequel. And I think that's fine. But if you don't, you may end up having that speed bump where you're like, shit sort of seems janky here. And it is. It is. Yeah, I mean, but it's also awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I feel like with GTA 5, like that was never... I noticed it, like, for example, when you jump in a direction, it never felt clean. Like, if you wanted to jump onto something and, like, you just never felt like you had that control. And I noticed that kind of carried over into Red Dead when I was just watching, like, gameplay and stuff. But,
yeah.
I never had an issue with, like, the shooting or the controls as much with GTA. So, for me, I feel like this isn't a huge deal. What I've wondered is, you know, when people start talking about these types of things, because I've noticed, like, it's peppered throughout, like, oh man, I have a lot of thoughts on Red Dead, some good, but there are some bad ones, or yeah, Red Dead's really not the game for me, or like you're raising like, hey, it's an awesome game, there is excellent traits here, of course, and they're like you said, some of the top out there in the last few years, but there are some negative ones. I'm curious to see how the conversation goes with the industry, because there was so much buildup, and I mean, every time Rockstar tweeted a picture, someone, you know, there was hype, immense hype, you know, like you said, biggest game in so many years. So I'm just curious to see how folks respond to, like, hey, this is, you know, a masterpiece, but how folks respond to the fact that it is a game. Rockstar is not immune, no matter how many years of development, to those issues that hit every game at launch.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things when you look at a title like Red Dead. As long as you understand that, you're fine, that they're a game developer just like anybody else. But I do feel that, unfortunately, there's a conversation that's going to come up. Because I like the game. I did have some issues, but I think that there's a conversation it's going to come up, and it's unfortunately probably never going to get answered. But one of the questions I think that's going to come up is, if the crunch time stories are real, if the developer crunch time amount is real, if these people reporting all of this extra work is real, then why is the game not an 8-year advancement? And that's a big dichotomy, because if you say it's not real, then you're like, okay, makes sense. If you say it is real and you say all this crunch time, did it pay off then? And I don't mean did it pay off in a good game, but I mean did it pay off in an evolution, like a jump of that gaming? And I think that that's a question we're just going to see over maybe a couple months start to crop up, where people, because we're going to talk about this in a second, another big game announced they had no crunch. And you get this situation where I wasn't really involved in the crunch discussion other than with you. Like, you know, we just were like, you know, we want it fixed, but you understand that it's going to happen. We certainly want things to be improved. But at the same time, it's such a big deal. I do feel that people are going to get 10, 20 hours in. They're going to start seeing these bumps. And then that question is going to crop up of, well, is this true? Because if they work these people to the bone in the assumption that they wanted to make a masterpiece, they didn't. Or they did make a masterpiece, but it's still got the same genetic issues all games have right now. What did we get out of those people? And I think a lot of people who defended crunch time might look at it differently after this. I don't know if that's true. I just think that the discussion's probably going to pop up.
Yeah, I think this is naturally, it's a game that's going to be talked about for a while. Part of it, though, is that a big experience that is not at launch, Red Dead Online, you know, that could be part of
That too.
Yeah. So there's
You want
a
me to
lot.
talk about cool stuff in it?
That's what I was gonna say. We'll shift it to the cool stuff. We just, I guess, want to always make sure we cover both sides of the story with these games.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, neither one of us are gonna. I'm just not gonna lie to people and pretend something's better.
Well, yeah,
than
that's the
it is.
thing. I get that. I totally get. There is always a willingness to, when a game seems to nail the presentation, the storytelling that Rockstar is doing here, there is that willingness to sweep, all right, whatever controls under the rug and stuff. But I think that they should be talked about regardless. Like, that's what I do in my review. People go like, my reviews have improved, and I've noticed the reason for that is because anything I think of, I literally write down on a piece of paper, and so every bit of data that I literally acquire while playing the game just goes out there, and people just appreciate having the information. So that's all we're doing here. I don't want folks to think that we're taking a dump on Red Dead because we're not. We're just
exactly. And I
surfacing.
personally believe the more data you know about these issues, the better you can jump in. And people have the game, so they can certainly argue to their heart's content as well if their experience is different. I would say wait until you played it for a while and see if that's changed. But there's just amazing stuff when it comes to the game world overall and the characters. I think that I don't like Arthur as much as I liked what's his name?
Marston.
John Marston. Only because it's an RPG now, because you have choices, right?
I like that.
And I think I like it too. I think what it does though is they have to blank slate Arthur a little bit so that it makes sense. Because if they have Arthur talking about things too heavily, then your choices might be impacted by that, if that makes sense. So if he in a cutscene is like, I fucking hate killing hawks, and you see a hawk and you have a choice to kill it, you'll be like, if I don't, am I role-playing him anymore? So they've blank slated him a bit compared to John Marston, which I like and dislike. I see why it's done. I think it's actually, writing's really good. Characters are really impressive overall in how they talk. No one repeats yet, and I'm, like I said, 45 to 55 hours in. I think it was 51, but nobody repeats themselves, which is pretty crazy. And they said that they had so NPCs don't repeat themselves ever. And the way they did that, they did it two ways. One, they recorded 500,000 lines of dialogue, but they also have a computerized system that takes snippets of conversations and puts them together so that their responses can be done organically, but also at the same time artificially, in the fact that it's not a person recording it. So you'll walk up to somebody and you can do the greeting, right? Which everybody blew out of proportion. I want to make sure people understand you're not fucking going up and talking to the dude about their life, because that sort of got out of control, where people are like, you can hit the left bumper and you can talk to anybody. You can, but they only say one thing.
Like, hey, what's up? It's not like sharing stories.
Right. And which is cool to me. That's still a big jump technologically, mixing those together. They don't repeat. The worlds look cool. When you go into locations, the number of people is much higher. So in the original, you'd go into a saloon and there'd be like 2 fucking people in there, and you're all, this must be the shittiest saloon ever, because there's a town in the middle of nowhere and there's 2 people here. But in this game, you walk in, there's fucking somebody hammering. I mean, the art style and the animation is unbelievable. Somebody's just hammering on the piano, and people are like dancing and moving around and talking and interacting. That is probably the biggest thing, is the animation. The layers of animation is insane. I mean, it's beyond anything else, that's for sure. Just little things that he does, how he moves, if he's tired versus not tired, if he's dirty and not dirty, like when he's carrying animals, you can see the wounds continually in the animal, and you actually, get rated poorly if like you've shot too many times, if you've killed the animal, if you've like overshot. All that stuff is great. Also, you can shoot an animal, it'll go off, you have to catch up to it, you have to basically kill it, which is sort of hard to watch. I'll be honest, as a hunter, even, I was like, man, because you just gut it. You're like, it'll be okay, darling, is what the guy says, and he's got his big Bowie knife, and he's like, ah! right in the heart, and you're like, okay, and then he skins it, and it's not, you can see all that shit, and it is, the first time I skinned a rabbit, so with the other animals you cut, but a rabbit, you fucking grab it and you go, and you just tear its flesh off. And I was like, PETA's gonna have a fucking shitstorm over that part. But it's all those bits of attention to detail. Landscape is incredible. Like, you'll go in, and the landscape has a subtlety to it. A lot of games will be like grass, fence, city, and there's not a big variation there. It's just instant. It's like a line drawn in the sand. Here, there's little spots of civilization. You see houses that might have being built, that kind of stuff. And then as you get closer and closer to a city, you see more and more. It's not so isolated like a lot of games. Where it's like city, and then nothing, and then city, and then nothing. And weather, I would have to say, is probably one of the best elements of the game that I've ever seen. Like thunder and lightning is the first time. Snow deformation we all saw, but thunder and lightning blow that away, I think. The first time you hear thunder, it will make you think your speakers are fucked up. Like, the first time I heard it, I was like, what is happening? Because it was just this low rumble. Oh, yeah. I mean, I couldn't figure out because I have these monitors here, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then I looked up, and I saw a lightning strike. I'm like, oh, it's thunder. Because it is so, I mean, it's visceral. It's like their audio is quite at a high level, I would say. And the mixing can get quite loud. I do know I saw some people complaining about that. Because this isn't GTA where you're in the city all the time, so you hear your car, right? Your car's going, right. So you get this audio level. This isn't like that. So you'll be riding, and you'll crank up the audio because you can't hear anything. Because just the horse, right? Just like clump, clump. You hear an owl, you hear some music. But then you get into a town, and that first time a gunshot goes off, like, I saw a lot of complaints today where people were trying to sort of find the right mixing. And that's not a complaint about the game. That's just because we've become so accustomed to this envelope and noise, and it's not really there in this game. So be prepared. It's the first time that fucking shotgun went off, I almost shit myself. And I was the one shooting it. And I was just like, boo! And it was the most, I mean, there was so much volume in that one gunshot. But yeah, that was crazy. And little shit, dude, like, you can outfit every weapon to your heart's content. You can fucking varnish handles. You can put all kinds of material on them. You can increase the range of a gun with putting rifling in it. Like, every item is insanely customizable.
Wow. That's something I didn't expect. Okay. So, see, that's the thing, is, like, I paid attention to the trailers and some of the conversation around the game, but, like, there's some things that I didn't even know about with this title. Like you said, like, the choice and consequence, I'm like, that's cool. Like, I knew there'd be some decisions because of the honor system's back, but I didn't think it... Obviously, I don't think it's like a full-on RPG, or is it?
Right.
You know,
well, okay. If we consider RPGs that you have to have like a skill to raise,
I'm just talking like you make a choice.
Okay, so if you're just talking about make a choice, absolutely. It is an RPG for sure when it comes to that. When it comes to skills, there aren't, or when it comes to like hit points or dexterity and shit,
level up and shit.
They don't have those, but they do have perks. And those perks can adjust things that you get as you find talismans around the world. So in a way, it's not the same way as like, I'm going to kill this guy 100 times, which is going to increase my killing skill. It doesn't do that.
Well said.
But it does have a large number of things that can be attached to your character or changes. I will say the survival system, going to just be brutally honest here, I think it does not have a place in the game. And I think that it's so ignorable that it makes no sense to put it in there, because when you do something like eat, because and you haven't for a while, or you drink, or you clean your gun, the difference is not dramatic enough to make it. It's almost like you meander between going, do I want to waste 30 seconds to watch an animation, or do I care that I'm doing 0.00001% less damage? And I will say that that's one thing that I don't think is metered right.
Reminds me of how I feel with Fallout. They have like more survival mechanics in 76, and like they're just there. Like it's so easy to handle too, and it's like, do I want to go get food now, or I'll get it later. You know, it's not harsh enough, which is a hard balance to strike, but
it's very hard. Yeah.
With both these games, I guess they need that. So I can get where you're coming from with that, even though I haven't played Red Dead.
It's also massive. I will say that. Like, dude, it's the biggest. When you're playing it, man.
Bigger than
like Matty. Yeah. Well, it feels like it. It really does, because Odyssey you could fast travel. So that is one thing I will warn people. Fast travel's been completely changed in this version. So in the original you could camp, and fast travel. Here, you have a very odd upgrade you can buy. And what it allows is for fast travel away from your camp, but returning to it, you don't have fast travel. And that's odd because sometimes that's what you want to do more, right? Like going someplace, I could do trains, I could do stagecoaches, those are all in the game. But getting back is what you may need to do. Let's say you got a bounty and you want to go put a disguise on because you don't have enough money to pay the bounty, but you have the ability to shave and do different hairdos back at your camp. To get back to the camp, there's no fast travel option. So you have to ride your horse, which unfortunately is where the bounty hunters will catch you. So it's odd. I will say that. I saw some reviewers hitting on it, and I was like, well, I'll check it out. And I really do see why people are like, it didn't make sense to change, especially because the world's huge. The world is so big that I do think that some people are going to feel like it's Dragon's Dogma, where there's a fast travel option, but people sometimes just sort of miss it. Also, it's complex as fuck, Matty. Like, dude,
Really?
that game is like hit this button, hold this button, tap this button to do something, and you're like, it is like a fighter. It's Dragon Ball, right? And then no lie, you're running while shooting, while calling your horse, which requires the same thumb. So I've been playing before and literally reached across and hit the directional pad because I was in the middle of this and I needed a horse for a quick getaway and I was getting shot. But it's the same thumb as moving around. So you're just like, and so I was all, and hit it with the other hand because this thumb just didn't have enough time. And it's complicated. And there's a ton of tutorials. So like tutorial pop up 16 hours into the game, I think was the last time I saw a tutorial.
That's crazy.
So yeah, actually 30 hours because something big happens. And a true tutorial, like it pops up and then you have to go into a menu, read, go, okay, I think I understand the system in place. Which is not a ding against it. Just be prepared. Just it is more than I expected. I will say that. There were times where I was like, fucking, what button combo do I hit? Hold, no lie, Maddie, there's 3 uses for one of the directional pads on the digital where it's like double tap, hold, or tap. All 3 do completely separate things. So while you're playing, you're like, inventory is hold, I think. And you hold and then it does something else. So
that's going to be the type of game that's hard to, like, if you want to switch between 2 games, like, you're going to come back to Red Dead each time and be like, oh, fuck, what was it again?
I do think that'll be hard, yeah. Switching items, you get the ability to have multiple guns later on, 2 handguns. Switching those, the game does not save. So I don't know if you remember this, but in GTA, and I think this happens in Fallout. No, it doesn't happen in Fallout. In Fallout, if a guy dies, there's stuff... Even though it might not be the same stuff they were shooting you with, it'll stay there for a while. But in this game, it doesn't. So you'll kill a guy in a house, and you're like, my horse has an inventory, and I only have the spot for 1 gun, but I want this guy's gun. So what do? You have to trade out your guns. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to run to my horse, I'm going to drop my gun off, and I'm going to go back inside and grab his gun. Makes sense. That's what most people would think. The game deletes the gun. And everybody in my Discord was freaking out. They were all like, what the fuck? I can't get this gun. And I'm like, yeah, that happens all the time. So like you'll go around a corner. If you drop something and if you turn away and look back, there is a very high chance that item will be gone. And so do not drop shit. Like whistle for your horse, do shit like that. Go to the door, half open it, whistle for the horse and see if you can get into the inventory, because if you let that door shut or if you get too far away from something, whatever it is that's on the ground that you've dropped just goes away.
Wow.
That's just, I think, the memory footprint of the game, so I don't really count it as a bug. Once you know it's happening, you can sort of prepare around it. Yeah.
Cool. Looks like I got a pretty big adventure ahead of me.
Yeah, dude, it's gonna take you forever, man. Like I don't know if you saw, but like some people beat it in 40. One person beat it in like 70, and then another person hadn't beat it, and I think they're right now, I saw them on Twitch or Twitter, I think they're at like 85 hours, they haven't beat it. So it's one of those games, right? Like how much you want to engage with it.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to that. We'd love to hear from you guys on what you feel about Red Dead. But there's another game. There's another game that we got to talk about. A real RPG. I'm just kidding. But One that I am super passionate about, and we just had to talk about it. So it was confirmed this week that Vampyr is coming to the Switch. Hence why the centerpiece of our overlay, Karak, you haven't seen it, but it says buy a
Oh,
Switch, and it's got a picture of Vampyr. Just because I think this game is so fantastic. I love it to death, and Switch is just like we were talking about it briefly before the show. You know, it's becoming that little console that's just giving second lives all over the place.
yeah,
Vampyr was a game that I think they said at 500,000 copies sold, it's a success. 1 million, they'll do a sequel.
yeah.
So I'm assuming that the Switch will be what maybe gets it over the hump, because we already knew it surpassed its 500,000 mark. So the game was successful, it was profitable for the company, and that's great news. But I'm guessing this is their goal, to try to get to hit 1 million of some sales, put it on Switch, give it some legs. Did you expect this to be a game that came to Switch though?
No, but that's only technically for the technical
That's what I was
reasons,
thinking.
because,
Yeah,
yeah,
tech-wise.
it didn't run the best at times. When it first came out, I think a lot of that's been patched, but I think it does a lot. It does a lot. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of cool graphics. So I think I was not expecting that. When I saw it pop up in the news, I was like, oh, okay. Like that's. But the thing is hasn't that been happening a lot to us lately? Where we look at the news and it's like, blah blah blah, game's coming. You're like,
Right.
oh. So in a way, that's very cool to not expect it and have it be happening.
Yeah, I mean they for example, the Hero Academy game I was talking about earlier in the show, like that launched on Switch along with all the other consoles. Like it's becoming one of those systems, and that's,
Hmm.
I think, just absolutely fantastic for it. I'm trying to see if they have a revealed through a Focus Home Interactive earnings report. It looks like the success of Vampyr on current platforms has given the publisher reason to bring Dontnod's title to the Nintendo handheld console hybrid. In Q3, the group will continue to maximize the potential of the Vampyr license, the report notes. After the game's impressive success on the PC, Xbox One, and PS4, it will be Nintendo Switch's turn to welcome Dontnod's title to an even wider audience. The report doesn't clarify if Q3 is in regards to 2018 or 19, though a fiscal third quarter typically ends in September, so 2019 is a likely bet. So do you think that sounds like a right place for it to be dropping, a year later almost? Give it a second wind? Because the game originally dropped in June, around a time, and it found success, but around a time where there was a lot of conversation on E3, and then like
Yeah.
the week after, it was just kind of out of the cycle.
Yeah, I think that overall that's probably the best place to release it, just because of what we know is going to happen, next year with all of those titles that are coming out. So I think that overall that's a good idea. I will say that I hope they do a good job of marketing it in a way that makes you understand why you would, one, return to it, or two, buy it, new and jump in. Because I don't know if Vampyr is the first game you or I would think of for a mobile system.
Definitely
Like,
not.
would we
Definitely
go,
not.
oh, mobile system, Vampyr, makes perfect sense. So
Yeah.
that's the one thing I sort of want to see what they sell. Do they sell it as the visual or as the story version? Remember, because they patched it.
Right.
They patched in the story version. Do they sell that maybe and say you've got this massive multiple hour vampire story, but you can also do the combat and stuff. But do they sort of? I wonder if they hinge on that. I don't know, but.
Yeah. I feel like it'll hinge itself on like one of the few that I can think of M-rated storytelling games on the Switch.
Mhm.
I think that'll kind of lend itself some popularity. I think, I think of people walking into the store and seeing it on the shelf for a Nintendo console, and that just, it has a different product image at that point when you look at it versus when you see it on the PS4. You're like, whatever, it's a vampire game, cool. Xbox, whatever. But like when you see that type of darkness attached
Mhm.
to a Nintendo product, I feel it's more eye-catching. Will be enough to propel it. No, I feel like it'll ship 100,000 units tops,
Right.
and that might be honestly being generous. I think 50,000 is more reasonable.
Yeah. So do I.
But it's still, it's good to know the product has made so much money that they're like, let's put this on Switch, let's give it some more legs, let's see if we can make some more money on the license. The fact that that Focus Home referred to it as an impressive success, do you think that means we're gonna get a sequel for this game?
So they said 500,000 and then $1 million for a sequel. I personally believe they were probably aiming for $1 million. They haven't got it, but a sequel will still be made just because like whoever is out there bankrolling them looked and went, obviously maybe you didn't hit this particular number, but you came close enough. So I personally feel that there probably will be. I will say that how you go about that with this current story is another matter entirely.
Yeah.
Right? Like, without spoiling anything, that's the real question is, do you call something Vampyr 2 and then is it like Red Dead Redemption 2? Where it's like there's some things
that or tell the story in the same universe from a different perspective maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the game didn't have poor tech. It could have used like more of a like the conversation system was brilliant. I always say that's like the most highly touted feature in that game, but like if they did a couple camera angle changes while conversation was going on, to instead of you just staring at subtitles or staring at a character's face, like more animation, that stuff I'd really, really want to see in a sequel. But I hope to God they don't change any of the writers, because they did such a good freaking job with that game. I know one thing people did take issue with though was it was about the number of people who you killed, not the actual people you killed when it accounted for the ending. So there were like really a number of 4 endings based off like you killed no one, you killed like a person, you killed a couple of people, or you killed a lot of people. And so that's where I would like to see some changes too. Just more end states. That would be great, especially after playing a game like The Witcher Tales, where it really just accounts for all the shit you do. It feels great to play a game and do that and see it ripple throughout the story, like immediate and down the line. I know it's a little bit easier with the card game. Not a little bit. It's probably a lot of bit easier than with a card game, but these are little steps in the right direction. I'd like to see. Don't Nod, right? Yeah, Don't Nod made it. Take Vampyr In.
I also, man, I don't know how they would do it, what they would do, but their ability to show a reflection of the world changing around you was fairly subtle in that game, but enough that you noticed it. So like if people escaped an area, they all just said, fuck it, we're leaving. Then not only would some of them be gone and like boarded, buildings would be boarded up, but additionally you could go into that area and occasionally find like somebody who got left behind, find out the story about them. There were bad guys actually that occasionally would have been good guys, but they were bad guys because the area they were in went bad. That kind of stuff, if they can nail that again, I'm all over it. Like I loved that about that game. It always felt like, even though it wasn't subtle, it wasn't that it was subtle, it was not very varied. You sort of knew what was going to happen. But the storytelling for, like, I can't remember their term. There's a term for the guys left behind.
Yeah, they tell you on the, not like on the map, like, hey, here, right here, but like there'd be like
it's like go here to invest. Yeah,
but
what were they called? Like remnants or something?
It'd be like something changed or.
Yeah, and you would go there, and then this mini story would pop up. And I still remember the first one I went back to. They were like, go here to find out where so-and-so, what's happened with so-and-so, who I dealt with. And they were, at that time, a werewolf. And I was just like, oh, fuck!
In the morgue, right?
This was not the morgue. This was on the big, long extension bridge between the two places.
Yeah.
There was a guy up there who was like a bad guy then. At that point, had become a bad guy. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, I never expected him to be a bad guy. But he had been attacked when he couldn't leave with everybody.
Yeah,
I thought that was just amazing.
Mine was I killed this girl's boyfriend. The place had gotten so depressing that she had left. She had joined the faction, I can't remember the name right now, who go out and hunt vampires and werewolves. And she ambushed me on the streets when I was leaving for another mission. And she was like, I was level 22, she was level 40. And I was like, oh shit, like she's kitted out. Yeah, she was a tough fight. So that's the thing, man. I could go on with Vampyr because there are just so many cool moments and interactions. There is that real choice and consequence, and it feels great. It feels like you're really in charge of the experience, and I cannot suggest that game enough. It was recently on a pretty big sale on Xbox. I saw it when I was going to download the Fallout beta. I think it was on a discount of, it was at like $25 or $30, which is more than worth it. One of our patrons, Toft, had actually just started Vampyr last night when Red Dead had dropped, and I was like, great choice.
Yeah,
I said Red Dead's great, but so is Vampyr. Not saying they're on the same level, but Vampyr will absolutely, if you love role playing games, tickle a fancy. That, because it's got the action combat, which usually there's a sacrifice somewhere. Like, you're going to get those choices, but maybe you got the top-down combat, which doesn't feel as involved, or you'll have the more involved combat, like we'll say in Andromeda, really, really smooth, good-feeling combat, but the story choices just aren't there. And what is there is very thin and offers nothing for the player, really. So, yeah, man, Vampyr's on the Switch. Get yourself a Switch if you haven't, or get the game on a discount. Support a great company and a great game, and really a company that does original ideas between Life is Strange and Vampyr. Don't not really goes in on trying to make some different stuff. They kind of chase a cool idea. Anyway, apologies for my loud dog as we move on to the next topic.
As my dogs bark right when you say dogs.
Yeah, look at that, man. The dogs are just going wild. So let's talk about Tomb Raider. I'm gonna kickstart this and hopefully pass it off onto you while my dog just quiets down. So Tomb Raider is the second best selling entry, the one that dropped this Shadow of Tomb Raider that just dropped this month. Second best selling in the entire series, which we kind of sold this short. So you surprised by this?
Yeah, but I mean, I liked it. There were some definite issues. But I wasn't I didn't really hear a lot of people talking about it. Like there wasn't you sort of get that low murmur of sound in like your Discord or on your Twitter. And I didn't get those. So I didn't know how it had sold. I did hear internally that it sold really well, but I was trying to figure out what really well meant. And like what it meant compared to the past games, but also just like right now and these stupid people and how they do their financials, which seem to be fucked up. But no, it did really well. I mean, I would say in that way, it's just surprising because I didn't get that feedback from others like I have in the past with like Rise. Rise, everybody was talking about. I personally feel like it felt like more people were talking about Rise than ever talked about Shadow.
Yeah, they said it definitely sold better than that. They said the only
crazy.
I think only entry that sold better than it was the first one.
Yeah.
And it's weird because we talked about how there wasn't much promotion. It's launching your Spider-Man. There's people excited for Red Dead. There's also Assassin's Creed, Fallout beta. I mean, there felt like there was something for everybody. Tomb Raider had a big issue with its exclusivity with Microsoft when it last launched. And then the movie, it was like, was it trending in the right direction or not? New developer working on it too. What was going to happen with this? And so, yeah, I agree. When I had heard it did well, I was like, okay, but to what standards? And it seems like it sold well. Like it performed well. It hit, I was looking, and in a month where all those games released, along with like an NBA game, I think a FIFA game, like big sports games that just annually bring in tons of sales. It hit number 5, I think, on a top 10 chart, which not too bad.
It's higher than I would have thought, to be honest. And I liked it. I mean, there were some issues, but I don't know sometimes too if the word of mouth came out of little things that they had done, quality of life enhancements, like the ability to turn the exploration color off, so you had to find the cliffs yourself. That could have been something that there was an undercurrent somewhere that you just don't hear about, where people are like, oh, hey, finally a game that's done that, and I don't see pigeon poop everywhere, and I know exactly where to climb. So maybe maybe they jumped into that. And I think that maybe the guys and gals who like Tomb Raider, maybe they're just not as vocal right now because there's just so much other stuff, like you said.
Yeah, I mean,
they may just not be able to bring it up.
What has happened is I've seen people pick like the original Tomb Raider models and then repost screenshots of scenes from the game where like when the tiger whose mouth is covered in blood or whatever is like face to face with Lara, and and people are reposting that scene, except it's like a blank faced like early 90s or whatever, Laura.
Oh, Laura. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was funny, and so that was like a picture I'd seen cycling around. So I feel like that got the game some type of attention at least. But I feel like there's these games, man, that there isn't a science behind it. There's not this here's why. I feel like it
Right.
just did well, and I feel like, because you mentioned like, oh, there's a part of an audience that maybe wanted less hand holding. I feel like the game offered more if you changed the difficulties properly.
If you did.
And so,
But it offered that.
yeah, I think
which
it offered
mattered.
so many options where if your average Joe went into GameStop, hey, I'm looking for an action adventure game. Oh, Shadow. And then just tell them about I don't really like puzzles. Oh, you can change the difficulty.
Yep.
Yeah, but I'm more of a shooter guy. Oh, you can turn that one up though. And it's just like, oh shit, well, yeah, why not then? Because I liked the game. I rated it as a way for a small sale, but I liked it because I found Laura really interesting as a character, really the only interesting character in that story, primarily because she was very flawed. And a lot of people hit on that as in she's not a good character, and I was like, this is more humanizing to me because
Right.
she made mistakes and she is stubborn, and yet it can be a little frustrating to watch, but that is watching at times someone grow. And by the end of the story, she has grown, but like there are growing pains, and I really appreciated that as a character. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it really, really vibed with me well, and it was like the biggest takeaway I had with the game outside of like, you don't really shoot anybody for 10 hours in this game. It's all just
Yep.
walking around, talking, puzzles, questing.
There's far less combat in that game.
Yeah, maybe that's
Far
it.
less.
Maybe that's it.
I think it could be because remember, there's a classic Tomb Raider fan out there who liked 1, but it was still a little gun shooty. Rise was definitely,
Guns.
I think it was the Michael Bay version. Even though I loved Rise, I can certainly see why somebody who's a fan of old style, Laura and Tomb Raider might go, But then all of a sudden, you have a game that looks like Uncharted, maybe not as good, but looks good, looks like that style of game, but is more about where to go and what to do, and they bought into it.
There are some set pieces though in that game that are just like holy crap epic, but also just there's so much shit going on.
Like which ones did you like?
I really liked the opening one, first of all, where you're
In the
running
festival?
away. Yeah, where you're running away from like the tsunami.
Gotcha. Okay,
I
yeah.
thought that was really, really captivating. Like it was a tone setter. Laura got emotional, like screaming at her best friend. Like it really just set it for me where I was like, I'm invested now. Like I'm in. And then I really liked, without spoiling it, the part at the oil rig. She kind of rises from the water. I was like, that was a great shot. The game had some really good choreography at times where I was like, oh shit, the angles that they're using, they're building this sense of epicness. But the only cheesy part was like, once again, this isn't spoiling anything, but she like comes out of the water and she's like intimidatingly walking towards these enemies, and they're holding AKs and they're like, oh, and they're like falling and shooting, but their aim is just so off, and I'm like, she'd be dead 20 times over right there.
Yeah, even by the most just absolutely inane shooter. But for me, I did find the little, especially in the first like one half of the game, the little forested city that you go to, and sort of deal with the outlaws. Yeah, it's like I can't pronounce it. I'm sure it's something like that. But I liked that. I think that you get that middle ground between a Red Dead 2, where it's like there's so much interaction and so many weird little things, where that game was sort of like not boring, but there was some stuff going on, and that worked pretty well. I also think that the game helped a lot by having the store owners. I think the ability to sell and buy and sell stuff did help, because it adjusted the way a gamer plays, so you don't have to worry. Like if you don't want to worry so much about survival, there's ways around it, which I like.
True. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm glad for the team that it's doing well, because I enjoyed the game. I was happy I reviewed it, and so that's what's going on with Tomb Raider. It's succeeding, and we mentioned this last story ever so briefly when we were kind of like touching on crunch, and Karak and I have kind of stayed quiet on this topic. Me, I don't want to speak for Karak, but me more so because I've been vocal about it in the past. Like some people are like, you're just reacting to because it's Rockstar, and I'm like, No, I remember being really vocal when it happened with Rise Son of Rome. And like that was my first time as I was entering the industry hearing about it and being like, fuck that. Like that no one should have to work that much overtime. And that was a huge issue with Crytek, I believe, for a while. Was people talking about crunch. And crunch has been very much, a part of the industry, and I was reading folks' responses to it. Someone had said like I think someone from Rockstar had come into a classroom and said, like, you have to be okay with working 70, 80-hour weeks at times in the industry. And that was enough for a lot of people just to walk out and say, like, no, it's not for me. So we learned through a story on GameIndustry.biz that one of the biggest titles of this year, one of the most successful ones, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, was built without, quote, massive crunch, end quote. Now, one thing I do want to keep in mind is I feel like when these comments come out from opposing companies that clearly compete with Rockstar, you have to wonder how much they're piggybacking off the fuck Rockstar train, right?
Right.
Now, but I have to say, I admire some of the transparency in this interview. That's very brief, which I'll point out when we get there. So, the sprawling wilderness of ancient. I should source this. GameIndustry.biz by James Batchelor. The sprawling wilderness of ancient Greece in the latest Assassin's Creed was achieved without working excessive hours. That's according to studio bosses at developer Ubisoft Quebec, who spoke to Gamasutra about how they managed to avoid overworking its staff while working on its best-selling open-world title. Quote, while we can always do better, I can tell you hand on heart that Assassin's Creed Odyssey hasn't required a massive crunch, like maybe some of the AAAs from 5 or 10 years ago, the studio's MD Patrick Klaus told the site. Quote, we can still always do better, but we have managed pretty well to succeed in delivering a game of huge magnitude, which is hitting a good quality level while making sure that our team are not burnt out and disgusted with working on games. We collectively on We collectively on the management team think that it is a false economy to burn out our teams. We risk losing them or we risk disengaging them, and we will simply not get the best out of those talents if we're forcing them to work insane hours in crunch. We've got some ways to go, but I'm feeling good about what we have achieved. And so then they go on to talk about Red Dead and the 100-hour work weeks and how it all ties together. But I thought that it was really interesting that, he was trying to backpedal on like, hey, the game's not perfect. We know that. We know there's some flaws there. We're not saying that we're tooting our own horn pretty much, but we didn't crunch to make what is, a huge game. When you were talking about Red Dead size, I was like, oh, is it as big as Assassin's Creed? Like, I think that's a testament to just how enormous that title is, because we're talking about them in the same breath. But,
yeah, exactly.
I really like that piece. I feel it's something that I do need further, the topic itself, I need further education on. A lot of people called it to, I've seen unionize the games industry to cut these insane hours to make sure that there are benefits and all that stuff. That's stuff that I personally would have to learn more about. But for me, I would love for these, because at the end of the day, my stance is, if it means these developers, if the game suffers a little bit because these developers get to go home to their family, live a normal life, then so be it. I am all for great games, but so fucking be it. I do not care, man, because as someone who I've shared my story before, I have struggled mentally, and burnout is a huge contributor to that. And if that is not managed, it can just be your internal demise. So for me, man, like, I gotta say, if there is any way to make sure that these developers just work consistent, like a 9 to 5 or whatever, and then boom, they're going home. If they can just do that, that'd be great. Or whatever reasonable hours would be considered for a games industry. But where do you stand on this story and where the industry is trending?
I think overall, one of the things we're in right now too, Matty, is that it used to be cool to say you worked a ton. Not to be rude. Like, that was a generational thing. It used to be amazing for people to say, I worked a 60-hour work week, I ate pizza at my desk, and I programmed Bard's Tale, what have you.
Yeah.
And now we're in a more socially conscious time where people are like, no overtime is acceptable, which is ridiculous. Obviously, it should be. It could, as long as you're paid for it and you choose to do it, you don't feel any pressure that you have to. But I will say, every big every big creation industry has some crunch. And I think that that's one thing we have to look at is like, what do we want to remove from a company and their ability to make something fixed in the last month of release?
Right.
Like, do we want to say you just can't release it because then you have all this other money that's tied up that could also fuck up the title itself? Hey, shut up! Sorry about that. I just had to hang on one second. Yeah. I'm gonna pause.
You do what you gotta do. I got this. All right. So, crunch time. Oh, he's back already.
Sorry about that. I just had to lean out and be like, shut the fuck up. I have no clue what they're barking. But yeah, I think that it sucks. I think that we should obviously unionize, what have you. If that works out, you also have to look at unionizing can cause work to go to other nations, which you don't want, because you don't want those people to have no jobs because unions, charge too much, and a company says, "Fuck it, we're not gonna be doing work in America."
I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff there, but I think overall we just got to this weird point to where even when I was younger, it was like, yeah, I worked 70 hours this week, and it was considered your choice, like, but it was also it was like I worked hard and I'm gonna play hard, and I still do that. I get why other people don't want to, but I think that this is something that we celebrated, and some of these companies like Rockstar have not made the connection that everybody's changed. So like they're the old man in the yard saying, get off my yard, because they're like Sony in how they handle PR. They're old style, they're old school, and they have not made the switch. So what he said, he was proud because he's old school and it needs to change. Like that part needs to, like, you're old school. That doesn't mean that you get a pass. It means if somebody reminds you, hey, bitch, you can't make your people work 90 hours, then you say, that's the thing right now. That's the way the world's going. We absolutely can't, and you have to switch.
I agree. Yeah, that's perfectly said, man. Yeah, I don't know what else I could tack on to that, to tell you the truth, because...
Isn't it crazy, though, that they work that... Like, you and I, especially some weeks, it's ridiculous. Like, I don't think even people would believe me unless they're in my Discord and they see me always on or something. Those guys are doing that for the last 6 to 9 months on one game. That's insane, dude. Unless that's your thing, which I think is very rare. You have your John Carmacks and a couple big old style programmers. I think most people, there's a psychological break that's going to happen. Which I don't know if you heard this. Fat Shark said it on my podcast, and then there was a Game of Sutra article that stated that they're having a hard time finding senior level development leads because people are leaving the industry who have that experience. They're so burned out that they're like, fuck it.
Yeah.
And they're leaving.
I get it, though. I remember, I'm not saying I am in a position like these game development leads and stuff, but I understand burnout entirely, where you go all in, 70 hours a week, hardly any sleep, and in my case, pretty much just living straight out of your bedroom, not really like seeing anybody or anything. And like, I did hit a point where I was like, fuck it. I was like, I need to stop doing everything and just go out and live a normal life for a week.
Yeah.
And reorganize my entire life. And I'm still in the process of reorganizing shit even to this day, man. Like, it is a long transition that's hard to make. And like you said, I did work those types of hours for a while just from my computer, but nothing close to 6 to 9 months where, that can be severely damaging. So what we can take away from this, though, is it's great to see a game. Now, what will be interesting is I want maybe, like, because Kotaku is big on, like, digging into, like, I think 90-ish employees and getting tons of accounts of both positive and negative crunch and whatnot, and the choices behind that. I would love to see a journalist dig into Ubisoft and their employees and do a whole piece on, like, let's see if what we're hearing about Assassin's Creed Odyssey is true, because that will propel forward the argument of this is, in my opinion, the best entry in the franchise in so many ways. It is an excellent game. It is the biggest Assassin's Creed game. And they did it without crunch, maybe. I think that's a testament. I mean, I remember that game is intimidatingly fucking big, man. And if they could do that without crunch, that's great management. I mean, I'm not saying it was stress-free. We should clarify that, just because there was no crunch.
Stress-free and no crunch mean totally different things.
That there was still a lot of hard work put in, But and maybe by crunch, we got to get into some of the finer details. Does that mean some people selectively worked overtime? They're like, yeah, I'll do it. You know,
Right.
that type of stuff.
And win, right? Because the big thing is whenever you hear somebody say they don't or do crunch, you have to look at their title first, and then you have to look at the time span, because QA is going to have some crunch at the end.
Yeah.
Like that's, and I've worked that, so I know that that's where like if you're working for a company and they will throw money at you, like they'll be like, all right, you know, work as much overtime as you want, because just like a video or a YouTube channel, you can create content every minute of every day and still have more that you could create if you had 25 hours in a 24-hour period. The thing about video games is the exact same thing occurs. You could have somebody polishing, and you could have another person polishing, and another person polishing, and you could still put more in and still get something out of it. Right. And I think that that's the big problem. Yeah, it's never ending, and that's what eats everybody up. It's never ending, so the higher ups are like, it's never ending. We need to do it. We need to get as many as possible. And then the people who are working on it are like, it is never ending. We need to do it. And everybody gets in this bicycle race of who can work the hardest.
Very true.
And people quit.
And exactly, because no one knows when the cutoff's like, okay, let's stop working on this. Let's do something fresh, or hey, this
when's
is over.
enough.
Exactly, because that's something I've learned, which is like, okay, I keep relating to myself, but I'm just trying to provide examples, because I know game development's hard to get. Not a lot of us are game devs. Not a lot of us are inserted in the industry, or not a lot of us had the experience you've had. So that's why I keep pointing like back to myself with something more simplistic, like video creation. Like, when's a cutoff time? Where I look at it as, okay, the beta for Fallout. Like, normally that's the time, like, go in. You know, you got to go hard and create a ton of fucking content, because, you know, this is what's going to make you a lot of money and lots of subs and stuff. And for me, it's like, but you know what? Like, sometimes I need to cut it off. Like, okay, I made some videos. I could pump out another, you know, I could sit at my computer for another 20 hours and pump out, like I did last year, and pump out another fucking 4 videos and be ready to rock and roll. But right. There's a personal sacrifice, an emotional sacrifice that just breaks you. Literally, like, you are a broken human, and it's not a good feeling. And so you have to, you know, it's different where you work for a company. Management has to be like, all right, cut off.
True.
Enough.
Right.
But I think there comes a point where there could be a choice, like if there is the choice to do a cutoff for folks, I you know, if you work for yourself too, which there are a lot of freelancers, right? You can always do a lot of freelance artists, Jesus. You can always do a lot of freelance writing. When's the cutoff, right? It's like you got to control that.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with you equating it because to yourself, because I'm going to tell you right now, there is no end to a single video if you want to edit it to make it a masterpiece. Yeah. You can quite literally edit that for 6 years, and it could be a 15-minute review because you're like, I'm a little unhappy with this wording, a little unhappy with this color grading, I'm a little unhappy. And so to me, that it's a very good example. Additionally, it's funny enough, but a developer just posted on Twitch yesterday. He said, I don't think people understand that a good number of developers do not know programming at all. And they may be doing a different part of the game that doesn't require programming. It requires scripting, which many people consider different. Or it requires, you know, narrative. Are they still a developer? Are they a writer? Well, with internally, they might be considered one or the other, what have you. Mm-hmm. But the thing is these guys and what they're doing matters too. Like, what are they doing in there? And I think that when you look at, especially when you look at Crunch and you look at Ubisoft, I think you also get that they're just a massive company too. And the reason why they may not have had crunch, not to boost them, but actually to point at it and go, yeah, like you said, you got to wonder why they said it. Because if you look at Syndicate, that was the last game that development house made. And they made Syndicate, and now they've made Odyssey. So that means during Origin's release, they were creating a game. Ubisoft might have just mastered that, right? Sony understands polishing.
How to start.
They know how to do it. Okay. They may just know how to set up a framework to where their crunch isn't ridiculous. Like, it may be there, and I'm sure it's there. It's there at some point.
There has to be some type of height and
there has to
imagine,
be something.
like, okay, we're a month out, right? Like you think.
Even if it's managers, just making, for example, I don't know if you've ever had to manage people, but when you have to manage people, if you want to give them more time off, you have to do more management because you have to look at schedules. So what if the managers, maybe it's just them who are going, okay, we don't want them to crunch, which then requires us to work more, to schedule it correctly, to track things. So there's this teeter-totter. But I do believe that because they did Syndicate last, people always say, man, Assassin's Creed, you can tell it was rushed because it was the next year and they released one, and you're like, bitch, it was a different development house, completely different development house that made Odyssey. And once you start to understand that, maybe you can point at that and go, that might be why they didn't have to crunch it, because they had 3.5 years or something.
Yeah.
Then Syndicate, 3 years, maybe.
Very good point. Very good point. Yeah. So I guess to get out, you got to invest in, right? That seems to be it.
Right.
And so those bunches of studios, and it makes you wonder when you see, I guess the first company that comes to mind, correct me if there's any others, but like Bethesda Game Studios has opened 4 studios in the last year. Probably because they were working on so much shit that they would have to start crunching for like Fallout, when that drops. But now no one has to really work overtime. Hopefully.
Also, Matty, you also have to wonder if this starts to roll forward, does development change a little bit so that maybe we get games, they're still big, but maybe they're not massive, but you don't have to fire everybody the day you release your game, which is happening all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Every day we wake up, and what do they say? So-and-so released a game, and then you're fucking the next day, those people are laid off. 30% to 50% are laid off. So maybe crunch time feeds into that in a way where everybody crunches to get to a certain point, and then when they're done, there's that downtime, and everybody says, we can't pay for you. But instead, you look at DLC, and you start saying, we're not going to crunch to inject this special fucking gun in our game. But what we will do is we will have some DLC or an expansion in a year, which allows for the people who are working to continue fucking working. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the difference between crunch time and not having a job, I bet you, Maddie, there are people who are like, I'm working crunch time because I may not have a job, and I need that money.
Well,
that right there is unhealthy already.
I've heard a lot of people say that a lot of the crunch time would surface because it was almost like we have so many people clamoring to work here, so pretty much you can work crunch, but if you don't, or you don't have to, but if you don't, I mean, there's this guy right here who he'll gladly do it, and then you're like, oh fuck, I got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of things involved in the discussion, that's for sure. Like, it sounds like it's like, oh, we shouldn't, which you shouldn't, but I mean, it sounds like it's just a quick fix. Just don't do it. And then you're like, well, okay, games themselves in development would have to slightly change, and will continue to change, I think.
Yeah,
to sort of get to that.
Well, that is a healthy discussion right there, and that's all we've got.
How many hours
this
are we in?
week? We are.
How long have we go?
Hour 23. Not too bad.
Oh, okay, not bad.
Not too bad at all.
What are you going to do this weekend? Anything cool?
This weekend, I am playing... my girlfriend's obsessed with Hero Academy, so she wants to play the game. So tonight, as we record this show, I am going to go straight to her place, bring the PlayStation 4, and show her all of that game, because she's really excited about it.
That's very cool.
Then tomorrow, Saturday, which once again, show will be up, unless you're a patron, going to be playing Red Dead. I got some martial arts, and I got hockey at night, and the Fallout beta, but I am absolutely squeezing in Red Dead. That is, cool. I am going to be playing a lot of video games, and then Sunday, football and the Fallout beta. It's just I'm gonna be probably streaming a decent amount of time this weekend when I think about it, but we'll see. What about you?
Very cool. Call of Cthulhu. I got that for review, so that's 30th, and I told you last time, I'm actually a little bit more excited about that than almost any other game this winter. There's Hitman 2, and they're doing some really cool stuff with that, but yeah, Call of Cthulhu is probably
I'm very excited
most of my weekend. Yeah, and I will probably, I'm actually thinking I'm sort of deciding if I want to double up. We talked about this prior to the podcast starting, but I'm thinking I might want to double up between YouTube and Twitch. So what I may start doing is doing that review, and then if the embargo isn't 4 a.m., 7 for you, 7 a.m. for you, 4 a.m. for me, if it's not some ungodly embargo, I may stream, a couple hours of that first part of the game too, to sort of catch both people. Because some people, don't want to watch a review or don't care, but they want to sort of experience some of the game, and they may not get that from a review. But that game in particular is, man, I was such a big Call of Cthulhu
I'm excited to hear your
fan.
thoughts on it. I really am, because you know, those are the games that get tacked onto the Christmas list. Like, oh, that's one
Exactly.
I missed, and
Right.
then you just bang, throw it up on there. So yeah, that'll be cool. That'll be cool. Hashtag for the week. Hashtag. I'm writing down on the paper to see if I think of anything. Hashtag.
Doggos.
Get it. Yeah. I was gonna say hashtag get a Switch.
Oh, no, that's a good hashtag. Fucking do that.
Hashtag
do
get a
hashtag
Switch.
get a Switch, man.
All right.
That's legit.
So if you got this deep into the show, let us know on Twitter at Jeremy Penter at G27status. Hashtag get a Switch. And we will catch you guys next week. Peace out.
Peace out.